So good morning and welcome to Tech First. It's autumn. I think we were kind of already talking about this. I've been inspired a little bit this month by a conversation that I had with a man at a bus stop yesterday, and he just turned around to me and said, "Init code." So I've kind of adopted a bit of Nottingham dialect into this month's deck. And if you want to find out more about Nottingham dialect, which is fascinating, there's a really good beginner's guide on visit nottingham.co.uk. But I'll be giving you a few Nottingham dialect tips as we go through today's session. But first, let's meet the team, if I can get this to work. Yes, so excited to see some new names joining again this month. It's really great to have this continual flow of new people coming along to these sessions. My name is Paul Bailey, and I'll be one of your hosts, but I'm also joined by the wonderful Alec and Yvette. Good morning.
Morning.
So, Alec, do you want to just give us a bit of an overview? Not Tech First. Put you on the spot there.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah. So, how long doing this now, Paul? Two and a half years, something like that. It's crazy.
Three years in February it'll be.
Absolutely. So, no, I'm a technical recruitment manager for BGSS, based in Nottingham. I'm also a wine connoisseur, and I've started doing wine tastings again on a Wednesday evening, which is not great for Tech First at getting up at 7 on a Thursday. But yeah, I've also got my cat Tatas in the background, who's eating her food in the morning and keeping me on my toes. Yeah, and that's me.
And the vet, you're going to tell us all about your what you've still got? You got blue hair, yeah?
Still got blue hair, yeah, still blue.
I almost had a shock there. Sorry, I thought it changed colours. Whoa.
Yeah, no, so yeah, I've got blue hair. So I'm, BA by trade, a big design thinker, that sort of thing. I work for a jewellery mount manufacturers at the minute. But I love Nottingham. I love Tech Fast. I love everything that we're doing. I'm always dead excited about these sessions. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I do like to doodle as well, so I am a little bit behind on last ones, but hopefully I'll be catching up, and then we'll be doodling Chris's today as well, so I'm super excited about that as well.
Thank you very much. So usually we would be in the office, which is a BGSS office in the middle of central Nottingham, and we'd be able to give you a free breakfast. But since April 2020, obviously everything has shifted online. But we've managed to keep things going, and the main benefit is it means you can join in your PJs. And we've had, I think, over 25 different speakers now covering a really broad range of topics, kind of loosely related to design and tech, but sometimes delving into personal development and creativity and all those kind of themes. And our aim, I guess, in many ways, is just to help you start the day right with a little bit of insight and maybe some light entertainment. Maybe, I'm not promising that. But today's talk, we've got Chris, and Chris is actually returning to us. He was one of our first speakers back in May 2019, and he did a really great talk on data visualization, and introduced us to a very famous squiggle, I think, if I remember rightly, and talked a little bit about the squiggle, which I'm a big fan of. But today he's here, despite his sneaking cold, to talk about data culture. And apparently it's got no buzzwords, but we probably won't hold him to that. So we'll meet Chris in a second. So here we go. Here's my first bit of Nottingham dialect. This is your event, and we really like to hear your thoughts. So if you are on the Tech Nottingham Slack channel, there is a tag there called Tech Fast Monthly, and Alec will do his best to have a chit chat with you. And if you've got any tweets, if you want to tweet any quotes, any screenshots, any questions, even if whatever you're having for breakfast, just to say, hey, up your duck, and we'll be monitoring the Twitter sphere as well as we go through the talk. Oh, new child. That's right.
Woken us all up though.
Yeah. We are on the tube. I couldn't find a Nottingham dialect related thing for this.
That's London, ideas? Paul. The tube's not in.
Well, it's this tube, not that tube, but on that tube. Anyway, we've got loads of great talks there. So all the talks that we've done since April last year, we've been recording and we've been putting them online. There's some really great talks there from people like Rob Antal, who's talked about home working and having a psychological perspective. Really great talk by Pete Gallagher on the history of IT. And actually, Yvette is still up there. You're number 3 in terms of the number of most viewed talks on our TechFest channel. When she came in to talk about her day job and her transformational journey into tech. And there's all sorts of interesting anecdotes and animal-related things going on in that talk. You have to watch it to believe it. I'll post a link actually on the Twitter channel to the YouTube channel, so you can get a link directly in there. So a couple of things going on in the local area. First of all, we've got DDD this weekend.
We do.
Alan, do you want to tell us a bit about DDD?
Yeah, absolutely. So if people haven't heard of it, it's I think it's a well-known national conference that's been going on for a long time. The East Midlands version's just been going for a few years, and obviously has been COVID affected recently, but it's back this year. One of the many reasons it's great is that people submit talks and then they get selected anonymously rather than on previous sort of profiles. So it's great for, diversity and inclusion, to get different people perhaps speaking that you haven't seen before. The topics are a wide variety. There's an hour on REST and GraphQL for technology wise. There's lots about sort of culture and design and those sort of things as well. BGSS, where Paul and I work, has sponsored it, and we've got an allocation of tickets, and because of a couple of things going on, we've had a couple actually come available. So if anyone who's on the session might be interested, it's on Saturday. It is 9 to 5, but if you wanted to, you could just drop in for the afternoon or something like that. You could meet some of the BGSS sort of crew while you're there, but just go along to some of the sort of talks. So if anyone is interested, then drop a message in the Q&A or tweet or any of the other channels, and if we're oversubscribed, then we'll do a quick sort of random pluck out of a hat. But yeah,
there are some, just so everyone knows, that there are some COVID requirements as well if you're going, so we'll put the link in the channel and stuff so everyone can have a look as well.
Yes, yeah, so that's right. Fairly straightforward, I think, in terms of
But I'm excited. It's going to be good. It's my first one actually. I haven't been to many of this, but it's I've got such good feedback from the past ones. I'm very excited this year. So,
the last few have been really good. They have like these different tracks of talk, so you get to program in your own kind of day and go to the things that you're interested in. And everybody from Nottingham tech community and design community is there. There's loads of people there. And you get free food as well, if I remember rightly, last year.
That's true, yeah. So there's no cost to people to go because of the sponsorship. Thanks to the other sort of local support for that.
Yeah. So good luck to the lovely Jess White, who's been putting a lot of hard work into making that happen. Who incidentally has a talk on our YouTube channel. She came in to talk last year on how to talk really good, which is kind of related, I guess. And that was from June last year, so check it out on the YouTube channel if you missed it. We've also got our neighbouring Brum. They've got Birmingham Tech Week. They made a big thing about this last year. This year seems to be a bit lower key, but it does seem to be some interesting things happening. It's definitely worth having a look at the agenda for the day. They've got, in particular, I think, a digital skills day and a tech showcase, which should be really interesting. And they've got the potential there for business support and investment. I think they've got a whole day around that on the Thursday of that week. So if that's your thing, definitely take a look at Birmingham Tech Week. I'm sure there'll be lots of other things going on in and around that event. So if you're inspired by Chris's talk today, we're really here, I guess, as a platform to help promote local design and technical talent. We've got some great talks lined up for next year already. We've got, again, on a diverse range of topics. I'm hoping that we've got a magician lined up, which could be interesting to see how that applies to design.
I think I could do magic over like a webinar. I feel like it's sleight of hand's easier when you miles away.
But we're always on the lookout for speakers. So if you've got a burning passion that's related to design development, no matter how tenuous the link, and if you'd like to share it with the NOTS TechFest community, then please drop me an email. And we're happy to provide any kind of support or guidance to help you craft a talk together for us to deliver.
And that was the office, but that background, that's what it used to look like in person.
Yeah,
people probably don't know or remember.
They don't look particularly, the whole staring at something, but it's a bit odd, isn't it? You can't really see what they're looking at.
I'm not sure how engaged they look. Maybe that was your talk. I don't know.
No, people are still awake in that picture.
Yeah.
So let's welcome Chris then. Welcome, Chris. Chris is, I always, there's lots of like, the buzzwords already there, isn't it? Tableau, and I don't even know how to say that second bit. Alteryx?
Alteryx, yes.
Alteryx, there you go. Alteryx consultant, which sounds very, very impressive and buzzwordy. But we're going to hand over to you now, Chris. And in the meantime, if people want to drop any questions that they have in the QA, we will be taking questions at the end of the session. But if you've got questions as you go throughout, what we'll do is we'll take some time at the end to give you the opportunity to ask Chris a question yourself.
Just because that's Q&A, not quality assurance. You can't just throw QA in, Paul.
Is that a buzzword?
Well,
Hopefully you can share my screen then.
Oh,
Yeah.
seamless. Much better than us.
Look at that. Yes,
That.
straight in.
Super. Well, thank you so much for inviting me back. I really enjoyed last time, and it's a shame we can't all be in the office to chat over a bacon cob. Before I get started talking about data culture, let me just dive into talking a little bit about culture, because I work for the Information Lab. Let me just get my screen going. So the Information Lab, they're a London-based company, but this is really the Information Lab. We're not defined by a logo. This is all my London colleagues who seem to go absolutely crazy about anything sporty. Certainly from my perspective in Nottingham, I'm the lone Nottingham resource for the Info Lab. And whenever I look online, they're all going runs around the Nottingham office. They're all, this is a Tough Mudder event that they all signed up to. They do yoga in the office. They do all sorts. And then obviously COVID hit, and that gave me a fantastic chance to get involved and start being part of this really sporty culture with all the young guys down in London. And there we are on the Zoom. This is me and my family getting involved of a morning, jumping around in the living room with, that's obviously not yoga. That's obviously some kind of a high intensity start to the morning. And to be honest, it was hard. And I think what we found is that, and it's so true of culture. Culture is defined by lots and lots of things. It's not just where you work, it's the circumstances that you're working in, it's the individuals that you do things with. This is, I think, the first session where both my kids are absolutely loving it. I think if I took the photo on the second or third session, they'd have been lying on the sofa after the first 2 minutes, not doing anything. So the people you work with, their attitudes, the approach of senior management, we're really lucky at the Information Lab that we get lots of support from our senior leaders to do things like yoga in the office when we've not got COVID, to keep doing it when it's offline, streaming it into our living rooms. And those kind of things really define what culture is for your organization. Back to my introduction, because I always forget to properly introduce myself. You can see behind me all the things that are probably important to me. I've already talked about my family, but photography, that's one of my photos. You can see those on Chris Love Photo. Board games are also there. I've got a huge collection of board games, as well as working in the data world. So in a nutshell, that's everything you need to know about me. Whenever we get a spare bit of time, you'll find me down Luderati in Notts, playing a quick game of something or other with my wife as well. So highly recommend you support those. They're back open. So let's get into data culture. Why are we talking about data culture today? Well, it's because whenever we talk to organizations about data, they're always a data company, and it's every company needs to be data driven. We all worry about competitors doing a better job, even about your industry and business model getting disrupted. But really, in this data era, the organizations that can be more data driven are the ones that will survive. This is backed up by research. So Forrester Research talked about companies that are data driven this is all the buzzword stuff. We're going to get past that. So 7 times growth for those who are data driven. McKinsey Analytics, 23 times new customer acquisition for people who are data driven, 9 times customer loyalty. So there's lots of research that backs up the fact that we should develop a data-driven culture. We should be having that data culture about using data within our organizations. But it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to get to the nuts and bolts and work out, A, how do you affect your own culture for your organization from your lowly position, wherever you might sit, whether you're a team lead, whether you're a manager, whether you're a developer within wherever you sit. And also, if you're a consultant working for clients, how do you affect what they're doing? And so really what this talk is about is about helping you see your impact on your team and what your team should be striving for in terms of data culture. And do think about those questions at the end. I think the value of these sessions is digging into the detail and working out, chatting about your situation and how you can affect your things. So before we, I guess, talk about what we mean by a data culture, let's just acknowledge what we mean by data and reporting and dashboards and things like that. I always make a really big thing whenever I talk that ad hoc analysis and reporting and BI as such, we need to make sure we separate those two things. Ad hoc analysis is something we do as part of our jobs, day in, day out, whether we like it or not. We all need to find information as fast as we can. And we hopefully, if we've got a good data culture, we're using that to make decisions. It needs to be fast if we're going to do ad hoc analysis, because we need those answers in a meeting, just before a meeting, during the course of our working day. We can't wait a week to get some ad hoc analysis. It's probably disposable. We probably just need to throw it away at the end of that. We're not building a pretty chart that we send on to everybody and say, look at this. It's about what the data's telling us and what that decision needs to be at the end of the day. It's probably curiosity driven. It's probably something that you're only going to do if you're curious about the fact that you're interested in that piece of data and you want to find out what's happening in your organization or the facts behind the decision that you're about to make. And it's probably going to mean that you need a higher skill level in the area that you're working in. So, it's not about understanding tools and the highest skill level for those. It's about understanding the business dynamics about the data that you're talking about. And you're going to need a bit more skill and more business knowledge about the data there to make that ad hoc data analysis. Contrast that with data and dashboarding and reporting, then that tends to be slower. It's something that we're sharing with other people that we need to spend time polishing. So it's going to take a little bit of time. It needs to be repeatable. We need to make sure that when we're looking at reports and data day in, day out, they're always the same. So that repeatability is key. And it's probably tailored to the audience. So your senior managers, your C-level audience are going to require a very different kind of dashboard and report to the day-to-day people working with that data day in, day out. So I work with something called Tableau. I make no apologies when I talk about Tableau. I talk about Tableau all the time. You could perhaps, and this is arguable, swap Tableau for something like Power BI, ClickView. I'm happy to talk about the differences between those tools. As I say, I am Tableau through and through, and I will make my case that Tableau is better. But when you see a slide with Tableau on, feel free to slightly assume that I'm talking about other tools, although I can caveat that later on as well if you want me to. So traditional BI, so let's separate out these things and talk about why tools become important in data culture as well. So I'm going to talk about dashboards and reporting, and I'm also going to talk about 4 different areas. So people, process, expertise, and time. Why does this become so important? That you've either got tools that do both these things and that you have a really good understanding of what you're doing, or you've got a tool like Tableau that allows you to do both. Well, what happens is most organizations only consider dashboards and reports. So they have what we call a report factory. A report factory is a bunch of C people sat in a room whose job it is to build reports. There's very few people who can build them, and there's lots and lots of people that want them. You send a list of your requirements to them, as you know, waterfall type requirements, write it in a document, perhaps only in an email if you've got a really good team who want to build that out. And it takes you perhaps a couple of weeks or months to get that report back. That's all well and good, but when it comes to wanting to do that ad hoc analysis, what do people have to do? Well, if you've not thought about having a separate tool to do that, or you've not got a tool that can do both at once, like Tableau, then generally people pull that data into Excel or Access. Excel's a great tool. Lots of people can do it. You know, there's very few people who haven't used Excel as the course of their job. And people are doing VLOOKUPs, pivot tables, things like that. But it's manual and repetitive. You can't, every time you get that data and do that work and produce those calculations, you risk making the same mistakes and or some mistakes and pulling that through. And you're repeating the work all the time. And it's hours to days to get that new ad hoc opinion. Tableau, tools like that, the modern BI world is similar to Excel. The learning curve is very shallow. You can pick up a tool like Tableau and start working with it straight out of the box with very, very little training. It can connect to all those sources that you've got, and it's centered around visual analytics. So rather than creating tables and reports, the new world of modern BI is about creating visual bar charts. I talked about this last time. The power of those visual analytics is really important. And that means that you're able to cycle around and see things that you didn't see before, new questions that you need to answer, and new pieces that you need to pick up, which then promotes this really virtuous circle of, oh, I didn't know that was the question I was actually asking when I started this cycle. Let me get some more data and cycle around that. And that means you can get there in hours and minutes because you're putting those tools and those quick visual tools into the hands of the people who need it. So I guess in a nutshell, the difference that I'm talking about is that, let's use a mobile phone or camera analogy. I'm a photographer. So traditional IT is really like going into a studio. You're asking people in IT to build something. It's going to be flash and whizzy, hopefully. It's going to be great, and you know you're going to be able to rely on the results, but you're going to have to pay for it. You're going to have to really get someone who knows what they're doing for that, and there's going to be a bit of a wait. Modern BI, Tableau, it's like having a camera in your pocket. You can take a quick photo. It's for the many. Anyone can do it. My kids are using the cameras on their phones all the time. And then you've got this is where kind of the difference between the difference I see with Tableau and other areas. You know, sometimes you know, Power BI, Click, tools like that, a bit more expert dependent. Most people can pick them up to start with, but you run into areas where you need DAX and other things to build those out. So that's a bit like having a posh DSLR like myself, someone who's a bit more expert dependent. Everyone can use it on the auto settings, but really to get the most out of it, you need something to build that out. So that's the background to where we are in terms of setting the scene for what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to do data ad hoc data analysis. We're trying to do the dashboards and reports. And how do we do that? How do we achieve that through data culture? I'll skip over this. This isn't that interesting. It talks about the modern BI kind of opportunities, challenges, and bits and pieces. I'll leave this there for people in the YouTube if they want to go back to it and see the advantages and the disadvantages. But data culture, what do we mean by data culture? I've talked about it a few times, but really let's get a definition on paper. It's the collective behaviors and beliefs of people who value, practice, and encourage the use of data to improve decision making. That's a lot of words. I think the really important piece of this is really working out that it's not about gathering lots and lots of data by volume in order to satisfy someone at the C-level that they're doing something around data. It's not about implementing a tool, be it Tableau, be it Power BI, be it Click, be it we had a query about, so I can't even remember what it is. You know, really old tools. It doesn't really matter. It's not about implementing a tool. It's really data culture is about helping people make decisions around data. How do we help people get the collective behaviors and beliefs to do that successfully? Tableau, who I work with, have identified 5 different areas where where successful data cultures really build out and run successfully, and these are the areas that I thought it was just good to pick up and talk about and pick apart and talk about how you can be successful with the data culture, and then I'll talk about how you as an individual can affect that as well. So trust. When you're working in a successful data culture, I think trust becomes really important. It becomes about trust around the data that you've got access to. So opening up data sources to anybody within your organization. We often, I often see organizations that have got almost a lockdown approach to sharing data with people. There's no trust from IT. If you go to them and say, could I get this data set? Then there's no trust there that says, yes, of course, you can just have that. There's lots of questions asked around why you should have access to that, even for the most mundane of data sets. So data security is really important, but I think successful data cultures see the fact that people need access to data and trust people to get that. And they also trust individuals at a team level to get on and make decisions around that data and produce their own data assets. I'll talk about red flags later, but one big red flag for me when it comes to successful data cultures is that curiosity in individual teams isn't rewarded. So if someone in a team somewhere, let's say it's you're in a bank and it's in treasury, or you're a finance team or a HR team, really wants to get their hands on their data, and they go out looking and they find something like, I don't know, Power BI to start making that decision, and the rest of the organization's using Tableau. I think it's really important that that team are trusted to really open up and satisfy their curiosity around that data. That's someone who wants to go out and start making decisions about data. So let's forget about the organizational politics for a moment and just think that let's reward that person and make sure that they're doing that right, they get the value from what they're trying to do. Yes, we need to bring back across an organization and make sure that we're all using the same tools and all using the same things further on down the line. But as soon as we start closing off avenues for people who are curious and stopping trusting those people to make the decisions about the tools that they should do that in, I think we start running on dodgy ground. Talent is a really important area as well. I think developing talent both at a senior level and engendering a data literacy. Data literacy is a buzzword, I accept, but data literacy across teams is really important. I don't think senior managers have enough data knowledge and data literacy to understand some of the decisions they're making. And so one of the key things I think we can do as an organization and as data teams is to make sure that we're putting on events and training that help educate our senior leaders and our C-level, as well as then events across an organization to explain to people the importance of data and why it's so important to an organization. As I said at the start, every organization is a data company. Every organization is using data to some degree to make decisions. And you're going to have people, developers who are developing things that generate data. It's really important that we give people the talent to use that data and make decisions from it, and give them access to it. So your role as individuals within your organization, particularly if you are a data literate or individual, can help to spread that to your teammates, to your senior managers, and help build out that knowledge within the rest of the area. Commitment. I think commitment is a really big part of having a data culture. It's commitment from the top down to know what decisions, what the aim, the driving point of building out a data culture means, and building out data-driven decision making. I see so many organizations that have a like the senior management thinks that they've got an approach to data, and they will be putting on like auto ML buzzwords all the time. You know, yes, we're great at data. We're doing AI driven data decision making. We've got some data modeling, but in reality, in the teams that actually have to do this, there's no more than a quick sprint to be able to test these things, and then they fizzle out. There's no real senior management commitment to get these things off the ground, and there's no appreciation of the difference between running a data science auto ML project, a rather complex one, to do data and build out a model, versus the day-to-day ad hoc dashboarding and reporting and analysis that needs to be done as part of the business. I think senior leaders all too often confuse those two things. And so senior leaders need the commitment to be able to push and be educated by their teams on the difference between those things, and have the commitment to follow through the rollout of new tools and push data decision making. Senior leaders need to be asking, and individuals, something you can do in your team is always ask, what's the data behind that decision? Because it's amazing how often we fall into the trap of making decisions around data without really making decisions in our organizations without really thinking about the data that's driving it. I talk about data-driven decision making all the time, and I still fall into the trap of making sweeping statements at work about things we should do, and I'll get called out on it and get asked, well, where's the data behind that? What's telling us that we need to do that? And the more we get into the habit of asking those kind of questions, and senior leaders get used to asking those, and I think, you know, that's the kind of commitment we need to consistently do that, and not just have our senior leaders fall back on, well, I think it's the right thing to do, as soon as they disagree with the data that's being presented. I've talked a little bit about sharing. Sharing data is really important for across an organization. It's sharing what we're doing as individuals when we're working with data. It's making sure as an IT organization, we're sharing the data sets that we build. I'll talk later about what you can do as an individual, but I think it's really important that, yeah, if you're a developer building out pieces for other people, you think about what people will need to do with that and make data available for them to make decisions off the back of what they're seeing. So the more you can think about your end users, make data available for those people to use that data in reports and make decisions off it, the better. And then, yeah, this all comes back to mindset and making sure that when we've, I guess I run the risk of making the same point about commitment, but yeah, it's about having a shared mindset that this is the right thing to do, and building out the that commitment to being a data-driven organization. So those are the 5 areas that Tableau talk about. This is their words around that. I'll just check I've not missed anything in terms of each of those points. I think they're good. So red flags. If you're building out a data culture, what things should you watch out for as an organization or as an individual to that might just ring a few alarm bells and make sure you challenge those internally? Well, first of all, that curiosity. Let's not shut down curiosity within our organizations. Curiosity around data is really, really important, and we need to make sure that people have their hands on data to be able to make decisions that they need. If I turn to you and ask you a key metric around your job, so if you're a trainer and I ask how many people have been on your courses over the last year, that data should be to hand immediately, because you're going to have to make decisions about the number of people who come in on your courses. That's a fundamental part of what you're doing. How many hours have you worked for the clients that you're working with? All those kind of decisions, all that data behind you is really important. And so it's really important that you've got that to hand, and you need the tools and the data sets and the access to that. If you don't have access to that data, then you really need to ask yourself why you're not being more curious about that data, or why it's not automatic that you have access to seeing that. I think tools do need to be mandated to a degree. I think it's really important that that our leaders in our organizations do tell us what tools they prefer us to use, but that needs to be backed up by them telling us why the tools need to be used. And really, we're not mandating a tool, we're mandating a mindset of a curiosity. We're mandating that people start making decisions from data. Then that curiosity comes into play, and then people will want to use the tools to do that. I think as soon as we start saying that people need to use Tableau to do this, need to use Power BI, need to use business objects, whatever, that's where we start falling into traps. So let people have a bit of free rein over what tools they want to do this, and let them make their own decisions. Then we can start working out what's best for our organizations and wrapping that back together. Another red flag: senior leadership don't understand analytics. As I say, if you've got senior leaders talking about, yes, we do analytics in the press, in their annual reports, just call them out on it. If you're not, start a proper conversation about, are we actually doing this, and how are we doing this? Because I think it's down to us on the front line of organizations to ask why we don't have access to data to make decisions if that's not happening. I think our senior leaders get too wrapped up in the buzzwords and making sure that they are seen to be doing things, and I think the reality on the ground is often very different. And again, IT being overprotective of data and access to it. If you're in an IT role or you're in a role as a developer, then try and make sure that access is given by default and taken away if it's not needed, rather than the other way around. It just makes everyone's jobs a lot easier. So as an individual, what can you do I've talked about this a lot already, but to foster a data culture within your organization, or to help your own career? Well, first of all, you need to own your own data literacy education. If you're not literate with data, you don't know where data comes from to help your job, why it's feeding into things, why how to interpret charts even, and how to interpret the data around your roles. Why is such a measure important? Then I think it's up to you to own that data literacy education. If you are data literate, own educating your team, own educating people who input data on your behalf, who are in charge of that data feed into you. why it's so important that they get those figures right, that they and you are making the decisions off correct data. If you're a developer, I've asked you this already, make data available by default. Make sure it's, if you're building something that people can make decisions off it. My mantra for this talk, if you take anything away from this talk, it should be that you should be more data curious. You should ask yourself questions about data and then challenge even just yourself on the decisions you're making as an individual. And build community around data as well. One of the things that I see really successfully work is simple things like, let's all get together across functional teams and sit down and think about this data, in this internal data set. It might be, I don't know, a doctor's surgery, looking at the number of new patients that are coming through the door every single day. Let's get a cross-functional team to look at that data and think, how could we use that data to make better decisions around the future of the organization, around that particular data set? Get people in a room to think, how could we collect more data around it to make better decisions, and what are the decisions that we can make of that? I think I talk all the time about teams getting together and talking about tools, and sometimes that isn't as effective because tools come and go, but everyone needs to make decisions around data. Getting people to get excited around a dry subject, data can be quite dry. If you start talking about the decisions you can make off it, what it means to you, then I think that's where that community element can start really benefiting your business, and you can start making some good decisions. And be data driven and question those who aren't at the end of the day. It comes back to just living and breathing that culture, and you will create it for other people because it will start permeating through your teams, and people will start having to back up their decisions with data. I want to finish where we started, really. So you are the leaders that need to enable data transformation in your organization. You are the generation who need to be integral to how your organizations do things, and your organizations will thrive as a result. The McKinsey data tells us that. So you've got a new calling. You need to be the new leaders of the data era. You're the builders of data culture. Go out, be curious, and try it, and see if you get the results. You can find out more. Tableau have done a great piece on data culture, tableau.com/data culture. The Information Lab, Let's Talk Data, it is London based, but we're doing almost all our events virtually now. So you can come along, find out about Tableau and Alteryx. You can find out, there's lots of general talks around there around data as well. So come get involved. There's sports events, hobbyist events, all sorts of things. So you can come and feed your burgeoning interest in data. And lastly, reach out. I'm on Twitter. My email's there. Do feel free to come and chat to me. I'm a passionate advocate of data culture, so feel free to chat to me about it. Any questions?
Yeah, we've got a few questions, Chris. Thank you. That was really, really, really interesting. And I think although you've applied it purely to data, I think some of the tips in there apply to lots of different other types of cultures as well, which is really really fascinating. So the first question we've got is from Zog. So Zog, I'm going to give you the ability to talk. So if you would like to ask Chris a question, you are now live.
Thank you. Maybe my camera's not going to come on because I bashed my head this morning. I've got a big bandage on my head, so a big plaster. Anyway, my question, Chris, is interesting to hear you speak. Thank you. Or see you speak, whatever. But my question was really around, you talked about from an IT perspective, sort of giving access to the data, or I used to use democratize the data in my previous organization. But it's kind of, what approaches have you seen work well to get IT to change that culture, or that IT and information security really to change the culture and give greater access to data? What's worked well in your experience?
I think what works really well there is when we co-locate or get IT involved in what the business is doing, and it invite people to those meetings. I talked about getting people around the table and talk about the value of data and what decisions people could make about it. Get people to appreciate just what that data means. I think sometimes, particularly in IT, the role of IT is to be the guardians for an organization. They're the ones in charge of keeping the lights on. They're the ones in charge of making sure this is available. It's a thankless task. And it's a thankless task when they lock it all down and get told, people want access to it. And they've obviously got roles around making sure there's lots of security there around that. But because IT can become so isolated, it means that they don't see what the business is trying to do and the benefits of that. So getting people in a room together, talking about things, letting them see the benefit of it, I think that's the only way we can solve some of these challenges. Because all too often IT are just left to it and they're the enemy and the business is trying to do stuff and they find ways around it, and those ways around it just aren't the best ways of getting things done. It's dialogue, it's communication. I will always keep coming back to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Doug, for the question. The next question we've got is from Zara Saxon. So just give me a second and I will give Zara the ability to talk. Good morning, Zara.
Morning. Hi.
Good morning.
Morning, Zara.
Really useful. Thank you. Yeah, having been a developer and an engineer, I'm still doing some of it. I'm just really looking forward, is there a checklist? Is there things we can give to our developers to help them understand that, the way an application's built can affect data quality? So as we know, those dreaded free text box can be an absolute nightmare. So, if you've got any advice on helping our engineers?
No, I don't. Building out a checklist or something like that, a developer's guide to being data friendly, I guess. It would be a really good idea just to communicate that out. It's not something I thought of, so thank you. But yeah, I'm going to come back to what I said before. I think the more we can expose developers to the end point and also iterate around, trying to be agile and very quick about the way we build things to get to the end point and start building reports and using data almost, in the first few weeks of building out data sources, then that's really the key, because the more you can start to use data and ask questions, the more we get that virtuous circle of feeding back, actually, what data should we be collecting here? Because if we start asking those questions right at the end, once we've built your free text boxes and things, then that's the point at which it gets, everyone suddenly realizes it's completely useless and everyone loses the will to live because we can't analyze the data properly.
Great, thank you.
But yeah, I will think about that checkbox and see if I can come back and share something on that. I'll throw it on Twitter.
Thank you very much.
So Chris,
Thank you very much.
Just on this one, so this talk's been really interesting for me because we're just about to do a huge data transformation in our company, actually, because one of the things that our company really struggled with is being able to actually analyze their data and actually see what we've got and stuff like that. And we've been having a look at all different kind of software and tools and stuff like that. So I'll definitely be tapping you up over your media things and asking you 6 million questions. So you'll look forward to that. But the thing for me is obviously, for me, it was such a challenge. So I've been, with the company quite a while, but it was actually such a challenge for me to get the company to understand how important the right data structure is. And we've got, as Zara's just mentioned, free text boxes. We've got instead of having a set defined contact list, people could just write anyone's name in, and then that uses user error and stuff like that. So it's been a really collaborative effort for us to try and get that shared understanding. And what you've said today just kind of highlights all the stuff that we should be doing, and getting the right people involved and getting everyone on board to really understand why the data is important and why we should be focusing on that. Because as like you mentioned in the talk, like without that data, you're basically just guessing, aren't you, really? So this has been really, really interesting for me, Chris. So and I'll definitely be asking lots more questions to you. So thank you very much. Yeah,
it's certainly not easy, as you say. It's a journey that you need to go on, and it's something that leaders across the organisation as well as individuals are going to be going on to build out what exactly they mean by a data transformation. And I think it means so many things to so many different organizations. So having a simple message or a mission statement like, we want to make better decisions around data, can just help focus everyone and say, well, actually, are the things we're doing actually helping that end aim or not?
No, for sure. No, it's great.
I've got maybe a bit more of a simplistic question, Chris. So you gave me the impression there that Tableau's got fairly easy learning curve. So one of the things that's always put me off about looking into these tools, it always seems like there's quite a large barrier to entry. I mean, I think even getting your head around what Excel can actually do sometimes can be a challenge. Have you got any recommendations in terms of getting on board with Tableau? Is it like a good place to start, or a kind of entry level that people can go in and have a play around with it and see what it's like?
Yeah, there is, and I got started in this way, so I'd advocate it to anyone, especially if you come into a tech talk, you're probably going to be relatively happy to dive in and start using technology, and that's exactly what I did. So there's something called Tableau Public. It's a free bit of kit. It's Tableau. All it does is stop you connecting to things like SQL Server and business type data sources, but you can connect it to any data set that you're interested in. I think I started out, I downloaded the ratings data across Nottingham for cafeterias and takeaways and things, and then threw it on a map and joined it and looked at data I was interested in, my local takeaways, were they getting 5-star ratings and things. And so I'm not a person who learns by just going through courses and doing things that don't interest me. So find some data that you're interested in. It might be football transfers, football results. There's lots of data out there that you can find that it might be of interest, particularly if you've got the skills to work with APIs and things online that free access to those. Download it and then throw it into a tool like Tableau and start asking questions, because that's what we want to do. And I think sometimes the fact that we're trying to do that in courses with quite dry data stops our curiosity. And it's only curiosity that will get us learning these things and trying to find out what to do.
Great, I'll definitely check that out.
And there's those free courses that I talked about on our meeting group. Every Thursday at 3 o'clock, we run completely free courses. There's a learning path on Tableau that goes through, I think, 11 different ones, hour-and-a-half courses every Thursday at 3. So if you can book out some time and you want to do that, you could do it free with Tableau Public as well. You could basically teach yourself Tableau completely free. So
brilliant. Yeah, I'll definitely look into that. So we are up to 9 o'clock now, so we're going to kind of wrap things up. But I just wanted to say a really big thank you to Chris. You couldn't tell, but he's actually been suffering with a really stinking cold all week and battling with poorly children. So thank you ever so much, Chris, for getting up this morning and putting on a great talk. It's been really fascinating and really interesting.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
So that's it for this week. We'll see you again hopefully next month, where we'll have another awesome speaker and we'll have the lovely Alec and Yvette joining us. Yvette, are we gonna have a sketch note from today, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. The other one's nearly done. I just need to spell check it. So yeah, and we've got this one. It's here. I've doodled it. It's here. It's in there. You can't really see, but yeah, I'll digitalize it and send it out. So yes, we'll do it.
Awesome.